"11 reasons why you might regret moving to Australia." Thinking about moving to Australia, you should know what you are signing for, well, in advance. The internet is pretty awful. There once was a dream of having fiber optic internet in Australia. It was an ambitious idea as Australia is one of the most lightly populated countries in the world. In terms of population density, there are around 3 people to every square kilometer. This dream tanked when the then conservative federal government instead chose to save on costs by continuing using decades-old copper phone lines for internet connection. Australia is currently ranked 74th for internet speed in the world, which is pretty funny for a country with such an advanced economy, where Wi-Fi was invented, by the way. Travel 3 hours by plane, still in the middle of nowhere. It's isolated both geographically and metaphorically. Australia is a very self-contained place. This makes sense how isolated it is geographically, hanging out on the bottom of a globe, taking hours to get across the country, let alone leave its shores. This sense of isolation is perpetuated by Australian media. Commercial networks don't give nearly as much airtime to world events, tending to report mostly on what's happening within the country borders. It is nice in some ways because you can feel quite safe living there, which is something that should not be taken for granted. On the other, we should care about what's happening in the world, simply because we are part of it. Traveling abroad is an expensive and time-consuming adventure.
I didn't step foot outside Australia until I was 20 years old, and I'm not alone in this. Most of my friends were in the same boat, unless they went on exchange, saved up to travel during university breaks, went to Bali for the end of the school celebrations, or had their families take them abroad on holiday.
And those who did go overseas mostly just traveled to cheap destinations in Asia and New Zealand. European friends, on the other hand, who fled through the countries and languages on the regular, are really surprised by this. But while you can travel, say, from London to Rome for $30, you're not gonna get the same from Sydney to Bangkok. Plus, an 8-hour flight to destination from Australia is considered to be on the short side. So you can't just jet off to Singapore for a weekend. Well, you could, but it would be a waste of time and money. Traveling within a country is also quite expensive. In the 90s, Australia considered to be a cheap travel destination for backpackers, and people in their 30s could actually afford housing in the city. Times have changed, and travel within the country is now as or more expensive than travel overseas. Australian public transport and infrastructure needs an improvement. A high-speed rail connecting big cities could be a wonderful solution, but for now it's a very expensive pipe dream that doesn't look to happen within this generation. In the bigger cities, governments are throwing money at the large-scale infrastructure programs, but they are throwing it at Australian roads rather than public transport. Take the West Connex in Sydney, the ambitious 8-kilometer-long tunnel which causing one headache after another. Australia is one of the most car-reliant nations in the world, and seems like nothing gonna be done anytime soon. Without a car, you are simply stuck in your little town or a village. Cost of living has risen considerably, so young adults find themselves having to leave a home well beyond the length of time that both their parents find tolerable in order to survive. Racism. Hello to the elephant in the room. Is Australia racist? It's a little bit of a tough question to answer. I could say yes, there are racist people in Australia, yet there are also many people living here who are friendly and inclusive. But just a tip in general, if you start a sentence with "I'm not racist, but," you've probably already lost the argument. The treatment of the First Nations population could be better. It is or should be a well-known knowledge that the treatment of the Aboriginal Australians by British was horrendous. Families were ripped apart through attempts of assimilation, which led to the stolen generations where children were forcibly taken from their families, some never to see each other again. There was spread of European disease within communities, and many Aboriginal Australians living today still having memories of life on missions operating as recently as the late 60s. There are many Australians who identify as being Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. However, asking them how Aboriginal they are or why they don't look Aboriginal is sadly common but very offensive. Also, for Australians of other backgrounds, interaction with Aboriginal culture can be limited, which is sad. Just learning about Indigenous fire management shows we can learn a lot from them. The weather can be really quite upsetting. Australia is a land of extremes. In some parts of the country, seasons can be described as such. Hot, really hot, bloody boiling, really hot. The summer of 2017, for example, was one of the worst. Extreme humidity with the temperatures going over 40 degrees Celsius every third day. And if your bedroom had no air conditioning, it would have made the nights really fun. Yes, it does get properly cold in the winter, especially down south and particularly in Tasmania, where the climate is more European or more like New Zealand's. In the northern parts, there are just two seasons, the wet and the dry. The dry is during winter time when the temperatures are manageable. Australia too is a country liable for natural disasters. Cyclones, floods, bushfires, droughts. All things that Australians have to contend with. These events are scary. They kill people. Look, this is the worst point on the list. Because for all its faults, Australia is pretty damn fabulous place to live. It's undeniably beautiful. It feels safe. The food is fresh, the air is less polluted than in many other parts of the world. The people are among friendliest that at least I ever met in the world. There's something about Oz, it grips your heart and it will never let you go. So that was just a few reasons why you might regret moving to Australia. If you are from Australia, living in Australia or just planning to move there, please share your thoughts in comments below and I'm gonna see you soon.